73 years carrying this family on my back. 73 years of sunburned shoulders and sleepless nights so the lights in this house never went out. This morning they smiled, kissed the air, and told me, "You stay. Someone has to water the garden." They drove toward the coast, new dress, new sunglasses, new plans, while I stood in the yard with dirt under my nails like I was the help they forgot to pay. When the dust from their car finally settled, the house went quiet in a way that felt like a verdict. Then the kitchen phone rang. Not a friendly ring, a blade. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered. "Ma'am, we need to confirm some urgent activity." The voice was precise, the kind that never calls unless something is already on fire. This morning there was a transfer request for $50,000. There are also attempts to change ownership on several accounts. Since you are the primary, we require your authorization. $50,000, the roof money, the medicine money, the not going hungry money. I felt the floor steady beneath my feet, not from fear, but from recognition. This wasn't a mistake. It was a decision someone made while sipping vacation coffee under a rented umbrella. What would you like us to do? I looked at the yellow walls I painted with my own hands and thought of every bill I paid on time, every storm I outlasted, every calf I pulled into this world at 3 a.m. Block everything I said, now. Silence on the line, a click of keys, done. Out in the field, the sprinklers hissed like applause. My cell buzzed, his voice tight panicked. "The cards aren't working. We can't pay the hotel. Fix it." I set the phone on the table and let it ring again. Here is what they don't know. I kept records. I remember every signature, and I am not signing one more thing I didn't read. If they wanted a week at the beach, they can have it, but they just picked a fight with the wrong 73-year-old. My name is Eulalia Hart, 73, owner and working hands of a small American farm that has outlived storms, recessions, and 3 broken tractors. This land isn't an asset on a spreadsheet. It's the rhythm that kept my heart steady after my husband died and the reason I still wake before dawn. I know which peach tree drops early, which fence post leans when the north wind hits, which calf always ignores the gate. I've paid every bill hauled feed when backs were turned and learned to do without when numbers didn't add up. Folks call it grit. I call it Tuesday. People my age talk about slowing down. I've tried. The soil keeps asking for one more row. And if I'm honest, I still need the ask. Today, though, the ground feels different, like somebody tried to move it under my feet. If they think age makes me easy to move, they haven't met 73. Done pretending. The kitchen walls are still the soft yellow I rolled on 10 summers ago, the kind that turns sunlight into a warm hush. My hands remember the brush, the ladder wobble, the joke. I told myself if the paint doesn't hold, I will. These hands are cracked in the same places as the cutting boards I sanded smooth. I keep my good skillet seasoned black, and my ledgers neat because a tidy book is cheaper than a lawyer. People love to say I'm old-fashioned as if that were an insult. Old-fashioned kept the lights on. Old-fashioned kept my family fed. But lately, when I rinse coffee cups and line them upside down on a towel, a question keeps tapping, what am I worth to the people who use what I built? Am I the backbone or the free labor they expect to keep bending? The coffee cools before I finish it. That question never does. Today, it finally asks for an answer. At 4 o'clock, Tamsin Greer, my neighbor and closest witness to the last 20 years, shows up with a chipped teacup she refuses to replace. Tamsin is the kind of woman who knows which dog bark means stranger and which means snake. She doesn't fuss. She listens until the truth shows itself. We sit on the porch, tea steaming like breath on a cold window, and I tell her how the house has sounded wrong for months. Keys placed down a little too quietly. Conversations that turn to weather when I walk in. Papers slid into folders like cards in a pocket. Tamsin doesn't gasp. She just says, tell it slow. So I lay out weeks of small things that never felt small one bead at a time until a necklace I don't want to wear shows up in my hands. She sets her cup down and looks past me toward the road. If your gut says it's off, she says it's off. The tea's sweet, the news is not. Once you notice whispers, you can't unhear them. The living room goes quiet like someone pressed mute. The hall clock suddenly ticks too loud, a metronome for lies. I step into a doorway and watch bodies rearrange themselves into innocence, screen locked papers, scooped a laugh that arrives just a second late. I don't accuse, I observe. People underestimate observation because it doesn't shout, it keeps score. I memorize where the green folder disappears, which drawer sticks when it's shoved too fast, which voice drops when the word account shows up. I am not looking for drama. I am looking for patterns. Patterns always confess. Nights I lie in bed and review the day like a farm ledger deposits, of silence withdrawals of trust. The math keeps failing, but not because I'm old, because someone is balancing their future on my past. The floorboard by the office squeaks again one note, same time, same hush afterward. Patterns don't lie. People do. Tonight I count every step. 6 months ago, my daughter-in-law, Vesper Lane, stood in my kitchen with a pastry box and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Insurance updates, she said, tapping a green folder like it was innocent. I was making stew, the good kind that needs stirring, not thinking. The pages were full of fine print that looked like gnats on a window. It's routine, she promised. Everybody does this. People my age know the truth about paperwork. It's never routine when someone else is in a hurry. But grief was heavy that week, and I wanted peace at the dinner table. I signed where she pointed, telling myself I could review later. Later never arrived. Only little changes did new envelopes, new statements, less mail addressed to me. I kept that folder under the mixing bowls. I never moved it. Funny how things hide best in plain sight. When the bank said ownership changes, the memory of those signatures burned hot. Routine my foot. I want those pages back. When Ottilie Vance Vesper's mother visits the kitchen, feels like a showroom. She brings store cake and advice I never asked for. Her sunglasses cost more than my winter heating, and she wears them indoors like a crown. It's only a week, she says, phone in her hand. Eyes somewhere else. You understand. I do understand. A week at the coast, a week with my hands in the dirt, a week to prove I can still be useful, but not too opinionated. Ottilie talks in a tone designed for people who don't argue. I'm not one of those people. She says I should rest more. I say rest is something you earn after the work is finished. She tilts her head a small, pitying smile, like I just confessed to still using a flip phone. When the bank called today, her voice floated back. Perfumed and sharp. Only a week. Some weeks change everything. I looked at those sunglasses and finally saw what they were hiding. There's a row of trees on the south side that keeps my history. I planted avocados when my son Cormac Hale turned 10, because he said he wanted money trees like cartoons. We learned together that fruit is money with a weather problem. We strung lights for late harvests, and he slept in the truck when I finished packing at midnight. I taught him the trick of listening to wind through leaves, how it tells you if rain means danger or grace. The first time he drove the tractor, I walked beside him, one hand on steel, one hand on prayer. The orchard has watched me work through grief, through winters that cracked the water lines, through summers that cracked my knuckles. When I heard transfer and ownership change, I went to the south fence and laid a palm on the bark. Memory is a ledger you can't edit. That row remembers the boy who promised he'd take care of me someday. Promises are easy, harvests are not. Tamsin called 2 afternoons ago with a voice that sounded like gravel, steady, rough shore. She'd been at the office of Aldous Fenwick, the town's notary and paper pusher who smells like old files and peppermints. While waiting, she overheard a conversation through a half-open door talk of a ready buyer. Talk of insurance renewals that are really signatures, talk of moving fast before she changes her mind. She didn't catch every word, but she caught enough. My farm had a price tag I didn't write. I held the phone like it might set fire to the curtains. Tamsin didn't tell me to calm down. She told me to focus. This is the kind of thing that only stops when you draw a line, she said. I stared at the green folder under my mixing bowls and at the pen in the junk drawer. You can't erase ink. You can still draw a thicker line. If someone was selling my life, they'd need my signature. They weren't getting it. Yesterday, I peeled an orange for the afternoon habit, more than hunger. The knife slid under the skin, the strip curling like ribbon. Tamsin's words were still circling when another memory landed, a brochure for a senior residence, all sunlight and watercolor smiles. Activities included, it said, like life was a daycare. I asked who it was for. Just research, someone laughed. The orange slipped from my hand and thudded against the floorboards. I didn't pick it up. I stared at it, round and bright and out of place, the way I suddenly felt in my own house. People will tell you there's no shame in needing help. They're right. The shame lives in the lie. Help shouldn't require a signature that erases you. The peel dried into a hard curl while I stood there listening to a future I didn't choose. By sundown, I knew two things: I wasn't moving anywhere, and if anybody tried to move me, it wouldn't be quietly. I set the green folder on the dining table like a witness on the stand. I brought a magnifying glass, a notepad, and the stubborn part of me that has never learned how to quit. Page by page, I read with the patience farmers save for rain. Durable power, successor, incapacitated. Words that look protective until you notice who holds the umbrella. My name appeared in all the right places and all the wrong ways. The signatures were mine. The intentions were not. I wrote questions in the margins, dates on a yellow pad, and a list of offices I would visit. The truth is, I should have read these 6 months ago. The other truth is I'm reading them now. Regret is a heavy coat. It still keeps you warm when the wind kicks up. By the time the porch light clicked on, I had a plan and a stack of sticky notes. Tomorrow the papers meet daylight. Tonight they answer to me. The roof in the back bedroom leaks when the rain comes sideways, and last night the storm remembered that. I moved a bowl under the drip and lay awake listening to the slow, impatient metronome of water. Every drop sounded like a question I had ducked. I thought about the times I chose peace over clarity, silence over the fight I didn't want at Sunday dinner. I thought about women my age who are told, "Don't worry your pretty head." Long after pretty was anybody's concern. At 2 a.m., I got up and made a list on the fridge bank lawyer notary passwords. I wrote, "Bring ID, bring courage." The bowl was half full by 3. At 4, I emptied it and didn't put it back. The decision had already been made. No more signing what I haven't read, no more letting comfort vote against my future. Dawn was an hour away when I finally slept. When I woke, the list was still there. So was I. At first light, I walked the path between our properties and knocked on Tamsin's back door. Tamsin Greer doesn't ask, "What's wrong?" She says, "What's first?" We cleared a corner of her kitchen table and built the kind of plan you can't build alone. Step 1, visit the bank with identification and a spine. Step 2, call an attorney whose loyalty is to me. Step 3, notify the notary's office that no document bearing my name leaves a desk without my voice on the line. We added passwords, 2 witnesses, and a ride if mine refuses to start. Tamsin wrote every number twice and tucked copies where panic can't find them. Before I left, she put that chipped teacup in my hand like armor. If they want to fight, she said, make them fight daylight. I walked home through a breeze that smelled like cut grass and thunder. The plan felt simple. The plan felt strong. The plan felt like me, finally, again. The bank lobby smelled like lemons and printer heat, a mix I've known since paper statements were king. Kezia Bloom, the branch manager with calm eyes and a no-nonsense cardigan, led me into a small glass room. She had a folder already open. "I'm glad you came in," she said, voice steady like a nurse before a shot. She walked me through 2 months of requests. I never made loan applications using my land as collateral, signature change attempts, expedited updates that always seemed to land on Fridays. She slid a printout across the table, highlighted lines bright as flares. Do any of these look familiar? Familiar is not the word I'd use. Violent may be the way your own name can be turned into a crowbar. I took a breath and told her the truth. Something is wrong at my kitchen table. Kezia didn't blink. Then we fix it at mine, she said, flipping to a fresh form. The door clicked shut behind us like it meant business. When my husband died, grief made me cautious. I signed one instruction I barely remembered until Kezia Bloom found it in the archive. No account changes without my physical presence and photo ID. She read it aloud like a seatbelt I had buckled years ago. This helped us stall every request, she said. They weren't happy. I pictured vacation coffee and tight smiles. I also pictured the night I wrote that instruction, hands shaking, telling the bank I might someday forget what I knew today. I had been trying to protect my future self from fog. I didn't realize I was protecting her from family. Kezia printed a fresh copy and slid it over. You want to keep this in place. Keep it, I wanted to frame it. Sometimes past you leaves breadcrumbs for present you. I held that page like a map out of a burning building. Yes, I said. And I want more locks. Kezia nodded. Then let's add deadbolts. We started with the easy armor new passwords longer than a gossip and twice as mean. Kezia Bloom had me set up two-factor on every account text to my phone backup to a landline I still keep for storms. She issued fresh cards and cut the old ones in half herself. These die today, she said, dropping the pieces into a shred bin. We added fraud alerts that ring my number before anyone else's, and a note on my profile, verify voice. I chose a simple code phrase only I would say when the world is sideways. It felt strange building a fort out of digits and questions. It also felt good, the kind of good that starts in your spine. Kezia looked up. One more thing, online access, we limit it to your devices only. My phone buzzed as each lock clicked shut. Somewhere, somebody's plan hit a wall. I could almost hear the thud. The printer spat out confirmations like applause. Then came the part I dreaded, the green folder signatures. Kezia Bloom didn't scold. She explained, you likely signed a durable power of attorney and successor designations. She said, pen tapping the terms. These can be helpful when they're clean. They're not clean. Helpful when clean. A simple sentence for a complicated trap. She laid out my options: revoke, replace, and record notices so anyone trying to use the old papers gets stopped at the door. You'll also need an attorney, she added. Someone who works for you, not for convenience. I felt the old shame creep up. How could I have signed? Kezia shook her head as if reading my thoughts. You trusted the wrong moment, not the wrong brain. I wrote revoke on my pad in letters big enough to see without glasses. We scheduled timestamps and witnesses. If the past had sharp teeth, the future would need sharper. I left that room with a plan sharper than regret. Bramwell Quill looked like every courthouse hallway I've ever walked, worn briefcase, sharp tie eyes that missed nothing. He listened without interrupting, the kind of listening that puts air back in your lungs. When I finished, he folded his hands. These documents can be undone, he said. You signed without independent counsel, and the circumstances suggest undue influence. He explained in plain English, my consent was pressured, my understanding clouded by timing and trust. We'll draft revocations today, file notices with the county, the bank, and Aldous Fenwick at the notary office. If anyone tries to use the old powers, they'll meet my letter before they meet a clerk. He slid a pen toward me, not like a trap, but like a key. One more thing, he added. From now on, any conversation about your assets happens with me in the room or not at all. The ceiling light hummed softly. I signed. The hum stopped feeling like a warning and started feeling like a witness. We moved fast. Bramwell Quill drafted revocations with language that snapped like a mousetrap. He stapled on affidavits, added witness signatures, and stamped dates so clear even tomorrow couldn't argue. His paralegal faxed notices to Kezia Bloom at the bank and hand-delivered copies to Aldous Fenwick at the notary desk. Any document bearing my name requires live verification. My voice, my face, my choice. We added a cease and desist for attempts to encumber the farm and a letter to the title company that might be approached in the dark. Paper cuts both ways. Bramwell said, sliding the tidy stack toward me. I tucked the originals into a folder that wasn't green. On the way out, he stopped at the door. "You may get calls," he said. "They'll sound urgent. Remember, their emergency isn't your emergency." I walked into the afternoon with a bag of legal locks that finally felt like they could bite. For once, the papers worked for me. Home felt different, like someone turned the volume down on a bad station. The porch boards were still old, the back roof still needed patching, but the air had room in it again. I made a sandwich and ate it standing up, staring at the yellow wall I once painted to outshine winter. For years, quiet meant loneliness. Today, quiet meant control. I stacked the day's receipts, sharpened a pencil, and wrote 3 lines on an index card, bank secured, powers revoked, notary alerted, simple words, loud meaning. I set the card beside the phone like a talisman. In the field, the hens fussed at something only hens can see. I checked the latch on the gate and breathed in cut grass diesel and the faint sharpness of coming rain. My shoulders, used to carrying, dropped an inch. I almost forgot to be angry. Almost. Then my cell lit up with a name I knew too well, and the quiet learned a new job witness. "Mom, the cards aren't working." Cormac Hale didn't say hello. He sounded like a boy who lost his shoes on the first day of school and decided it was the sidewalk's fault. I let him talk, hotel desk. Declined transactions, a line of people behind him, getting impatient. He used the word glitch, the way some folks use bless your heart. I looked at the index card by my phone. Bank secured, powers revoked, notary alerted. "It's not a glitch," I said, voice level as a fence post. He went quiet, the kind of quiet that means gears are grinding. "What did you do?" I thought of avocados and tractor lessons and promises made under orchard lights. "I protected what I built," I said. "That's what I did." He exhaled like a slammed door. Somewhere behind him, a woman said my name like it owed her money. The call didn't drop. I did right into a backbone I forgot I owned. I kept my voice steady. "Listen carefully, Cormac Hale. All joint accounts are frozen. Authorizations are revoked. If you need funds, you'll need your own." He started to argue, reaching for the word family like a crowbar. I took it away. Family doesn't sell a roof over my head or call me confused to speed a signature. He demanded I come to the bank right now. I told him I'd already been. He asked if I could at least fix the hotel bill. I said no. Not cold, just final. "Come home," I added. "We need to talk where the truth can find us." The line went dead in a rush of ocean noise and pride. I set the phone down and waited for the shaking. It didn't come. I stepped onto the porch and realized I had drawn something I couldn't see but could feel, the line where I end and everyone else begins. Once you draw it, you keep it. My cell rang again. Vesper Lane, first tone, sugary and brittle. She used words like misunderstanding and stress and asked me to be reasonable the way people do when reason would get in their way. I stayed with facts, accounts frozen, powers revoked, lawyer retained. Then Ottilie Vance took the phone. Her voice could cut glass. She talked about safety responsibility and a woman your age as if the number were a diagnosis. I let her finish. "A woman my age," I said, "built this place. A woman my age knows the difference between help and control." She shifted to warnings, fees, penalties, embarrassment. I pictured those sunglasses catching the sunset in a hotel lobby where the bill just bounced. "You made a mess," she said. "No," I replied. "I found one." I didn't raise my voice. I just hung up. The click felt like closing a gate, latched, tested, strong. The phone tried to ring again. I let the sky answer. Storm clouds stacked on the horizon like folded blankets, and the first drops tapped the porch rail. I sat in my rocker and thought about every year I stood in the rain, pretending I wasn't wet. Bramwell Quill had warned me, "They'll escalate. Hold your line." Kezia Bloom had promised, "We'll back you." I believed them both, but I needed to believe me. The phone buzzed with texts that didn't get nicer with repetition. I turned it face down and watched runoff carve clean lines through the driveway dust. The hens tucked themselves under the oak without waiting for an invitation. Smart birds. I realized this was the first storm in a long time where I wasn't scrambling for buckets. The leaks I worried about weren't in my roof, they were in my boundaries. I picked up the umbrella by the door and laughed at the smallness of it. Turns out you don't need a bigger umbrella. You need to stop loaning it out. The rain eased into a lavender evening, and I walked the rows with a hose in one hand and certainty in the other. The tomatoes were heavy, the basil loud with summer. I thought of Aldous Fenwick filing my revocations, of Kezia Bloom flagging my profile of Bramwell Quill, sharpening letters like nails. The farm looked exactly the same, and nothing like it had that morning. I set the hose to a slow circle and let the water do what water does, return what's been given. Cicadas struck up their electric hymn. I pressed my palm to the fence post that leans when the north wind hits and said it out loud so the boards would remember. This is my land. My name stays on it because I say so. Somewhere out on the highway, a car took a curve too fast and corrected. I smiled at the sound. Corrections are loud. Ownership is quiet. I turned off the spigot and kept what was mine. They rolled in at dusk, headlights cutting the yard like search beams. Doors slammed, voices hushed. I stayed in my porch rocker and let the crickets keep time. Cormac Hale reached the steps. First hands empty, eyes busy. Vesper Lane hovered behind him, dress wrinkled from a drive that didn't go as planned. Ottilie Vance adjusted her sunglasses, though the sun had already given up. Nobody said hello. I didn't rescue them with one. When you've spent a lifetime cushioning blows, there comes a day you let the punch land where it belongs. I folded my hands and waited. The hose still snaked across the grass, glinting like a quiet warning. We need to talk. Cormac said, voice practiced soft. The porch boards remembered him as a boy. They didn't creak now. Good, I said. Then say the part you practiced in the car. The night air thickened. Somebody would lie first. I wasn't volunteering. The rocker didn't move. The ground did. Mom, we were trying to protect you. Cormac Hale began, each word wrapped in gauze. Protect me from what my own roof. My own ledger. I let the question hang and aimed for the truth instead. Who's the buyer? His mouth opened, then stalled. A look passed between him and Vesper Lane that reminded me of passing notes in 8th grade. There is no buyer, Vesper said, smile ironed flat. Rumors. I leaned forward just enough to make the rocker sigh. Rumors that no sale prices and closing dates don't sound like rumors. The porch light flickered, and for a second I saw him the way the orchard remembers a boy who once believed work was a kind of love. Protecting me would have meant fixing the leak, I said, not selling the roof. Vesper stepped onto the first stair heels, sinking in dirt. You're overreacting. I nodded at the empty driveway behind their car. Looks like underreacting finally retired. The night held its breath. Vesper Lane lifted her chin. We haven't spoken to anyone about selling. I tasted citrus, the bitterness of yesterday's peel gone hard on the counter. 2 days ago, a conversation floated out of Aldous Fenwick's office. Half-open door, full sentences. Cormac blinked like someone stepped on his shadow. You're misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is what people accuse you when they want you to misunderstand yourself. I heard about a ready buyer. I said about insurance renewals. There were really signatures about moving fast before I got wise. Vesper's smile loosened. Town gossip. Town gossip doesn't know escrow timelines. Ottilie's phone lit up in her hand like a small courtroom. I didn't need it. Here's what matters, I said. My name is the key to every lock you've been rattling. Today, those locks learned my voice. The wind shifted, bringing the faint smell of ocean sunscreen they didn't get to enjoy. The porch felt smaller. The truth felt bigger. Nobody reached for the doorknob. Ottilie Vance stepped forward, voice smooth as a sales floor. A woman your age shouldn't be isolated out here. It's dangerous. You need help managing things. The word things tried to swallow a lifetime. A woman my age, I said, built things that pay your hotel bill. She didn't flinch. People who live behind sunglasses don't. We were planning responsibly, she continued. These decisions are hard. Hard as hauling feed at dawn. Hard as burying a husband and learning QuickBooks the same week. If you wanted to help, I said you'd have asked what help looks like to me. Cormac Hale shifted, caught between the script and the porch he grew up on. We were afraid you'd say no. Ottilie added as if consent were a technicality. Saying no is a right, I said, not a diagnosis. The cicadas surged. Somewhere a dog barked at a deer that had already moved on. I looked at the three of them and decided not to. I stood. The rocker tapped the board once like a gavel. Do you know what's dangerous? I asked. Believing you're safe? Because the threat shares your last name. Vesper Lane laughed too fast. Cormac Hale didn't. I stepped down one stair, closing the space between us without offering comfort. I have slept through storms that peeled shingles like paper. I have driven fence posts in clay that fought me back. None of it scared me like the thought of signing myself out of my own life, because someone said it was for my own good. Ottilie's jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. Drama is when you cry over a broken plate. This was theft with paperwork. I pointed to the kitchen window where the yellow walls caught the last light. That room has fed you for years. Today it fed me a truth I can chew. The sky went plumb. I didn't need more words. I needed the next move, and it wasn't mine. The porch settled under our weight, honest wood refusing to pretend. I turned to Cormac Hale. Tell me about the call to the notary, the one that mentioned early memory issues. He stared past me out to the orchard that knows better. No, I said. You were building a case, the kind that turns capable into confused, so a signature stops needing a person. I could have shouted. I didn't. Quiet travels farther. Say it, I added. Say you told Aldous Fenwick I might be slipping. Vesper Lane cut in. It was precaution. Precaution is a seatbelt. This was a shove. Cormac finally looked at me. I was scared. Fear makes honest people careful. It makes dishonest people creative. You taught me to check fences, I said, not to cut them. He closed his eyes. Admission didn't arrive, but the truth did. He had used my name against me. The orchard didn't clap. It simply didn't forget. Neither would I. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder that wasn't green. These are revocations, I said, signed by me, filed by Bramwell Quill, noticed at the bank by Kezia Bloom, logged with Aldous Fenwick. I handed copies across like weather reports the storm you planned for already passed, and it didn't hit where you thought. Vesper Lane flipped pages, color draining fast. Ottilie Vance scanned for loopholes like a raccoon scanning for shine. This won't hold, Ottilie said. It will, I answered, because it's mine. Cormac didn't reach for his copy. He watched me instead, like he was trying to recognize the mother he'd underestimated. From now on, I continued, if a paper carries my name, it also carries my voice. Any doubt they call me, not you. The night insects tuned up. The old porch fan clicked a steady metronome, yes, yes, yes. Ottilie set the folder down as if it bit. In a way, it finally did. I opened the screen door and let it complain on its hinge the way it always has. Go, I said. This house is no longer your home. Cormac Hale flinched at the word home like it was a hot pan. Vesper Lane scoffed. You can't be serious. I've never been more. Ottilie Vance started to protest, stringing laws like pearls. Then call your lawyer, I said. Mine answers. I didn't raise a hand. I didn't threaten a thing. I simply enforced a boundary, older than all of us. The owner decides who stays. The hallway behind me smelled like soap and tomatoes. It smelled like a life I would not surrender for anyone's convenience. Cormac looked at the photos on the wall, birthdays, orchards, a Christmas with a lopsided tree. He took one step back, then another. Vesper grabbed his arm hard enough to bruise. We're not finished, she said. You are for tonight, I replied, and let the screen door shut between us. At the bottom step, Cormac Hale turned. Please, don't do this. We're family. He said family like a password. He was sure still worked. It didn't. Family means protection, I said, not possession. He looked smaller without the porch holding him up. We can fix it, he tried. We can undo? We did undo, I said. Today, at the bank, at the lawyer's, at the notary. Vesper Lane rolled her eyes. Ottilie Vance checked her phone already, calculating the next move. I'm asking you to leave the property tonight, I continued. We will talk again, but not on a doorstep where truth trips. His shoulders fell, the way shoulders do when a load returns to the person who earned it. I don't have gas, he said, voice thin. Then call a friend, I said, not your mother. He swallowed whatever came next. Vesper Lane tugged him toward the car. The gravel reported every step. My backbone didn't ask for applause. It stood. The screen door opened behind me with a hush I recognized. Tamsin Greer stepped out, no words, just presence. The kind that makes liars stand up straighter. She didn't glare or gloat. She leaned against the post like a neighbor checking the weather. Vesper Lane noticed and stiffened. Ottilie Vance put her phone away as if privacy had suddenly become valuable. Tamsin's teacup wasn't in her hand, but the steadiness of it was. Everything all right, she asked, voice that could soothe a spooked horse. It is, I said. We're done for tonight. Tamsin nodded once. Good. She looked past me into the house, then back at the yard, claiming the ground in that quiet way women our age do, without permission, without apology. Cormac Hale spared Tamsin a glance, and found no shelter there either. The porch felt bigger with her on it, not because she would fight for me, but because she knew I was fighting just fine. After the taillights disappeared, the house settled like a sigh let out too long. I cracked 2 eggs into a skillet, chopped tomatoes still warm from the vine, and let dinner answer questions I didn't want to speak yet. Tamsin Greer rinsed the cutting board, set it to dry, and left without advice. The kitchen light hummed a simple, ordinary sound I'd missed while listening for the next crisis. I ate standing, then sat, then realized I wasn't measuring silence as proof of failure anymore. Silence tasted like peace. I washed the pan and stocked the coffee for morning. On the table, the notepad waited where I'd left it, tomorrow's errands, already crossed off. I wrote one more line, change locks on back door, then drew a small star beside it. The star wasn't for hope. It was for follow-through. Outside, the night insects carried on with their choir. Inside, I plated leftovers for breakfast, a gift to the woman who shows up. I stepped onto the porch with a blanket, and the kind of tired that feels clean. The sky had gone velvet, the stars stubborn and bright the way they get after rain. Tamsin Greer's kitchen window glowed across the fence like a lighthouse, steady but not nosy. I thought about Bramwell Quill's firm pen, Kezia Bloom's careful locks, Aldous Fenwick stamping the notices he should have seen before. The farm was quiet, except for the creek and a late hen complaining about bedtime. I lifted my face to the dark and made a choice older than my wrinkles to live here on my own terms. Freedom didn't arrive with trumpets. It arrived with a chair that didn't rock unless I told it to. Somewhere down the road, a siren wailed and faded. Trouble keeps moving. Boundaries stay. I pulled the blanket around my shoulders and said it once more. For the boards and the trees and the night to hold. This is mine. Morning brought a call from Bramwell Quill. Before the coffee finished dripping, he sounded like a level held against a wall. Everything is filed, he said. Revocations recorded. Notices served. If anyone so much as waves those old papers, they'll meet my letter first. He walked me through the routing county clerk stamped bank. Confirmed by Kezia Bloom notary ledger, updated by Aldous Fenwick. I traced a finger along the counter's worn edge and realized my shoulders had dropped an inch. What should I expect next? I asked. Noise, he said, then quiet. Hold your line. He offered one more thing. A checklist for fraud alerts, title locks, and a simple script for calls I didn't want to have. We hung up, and the kitchen felt taller, like someone raised the ceiling overnight. Outside, the hens complained about breakfast. Inside, the clock ticked like approval. Paper had been a weapon against me. Today, it turned into armor. Somewhere a plan I didn't make died. I dialed Ephraim Huxley, the contractor who's been fixing other people's mistakes since before YouTube thought it could. Roof walls and the kitchen needs a second life, I said. He arrived by lunch with a tape measure that has seen divorces and hailstorms. We walked the eaves while he named each problem like an old friend, soft spots, tired flashing paint that surrendered to last winter. "You want pretty or permanent?" he asked. "Both," I said. He sketched a timeline on the hood of his truck, penciling in crews and costs, stopping only when a hawk shadow crossed the yard. 3 months if weather behaves, less if it doesn't. We shook on it. He doesn't do fingertips, he does forearms. I handed him a house key that used to feel like an apology. "Start with the roof," I said. "I'm tired of bowls." He laughed, then got quiet. "You aren't just repairing a house," he said. "You're raising it." The nail guns started singing. Next, I called Dr. Larkin Snow, the farm vet who treats animals and anxiety with the same calm. "Thinking chickens, then goats, maybe a few feeder pigs," I said. He asked smarter questions than most bankers' acreage. "Feed costs market days, who helps on Saturdays?" We walked the fence line, and he pointed where goats would test my faith, where shade would save my sanity. "Start small," he advised. "Let demand outrun supply on purpose." He scribbled vaccinations, mineral blocks, and a calendar that left room for naps I probably wouldn't take. We set dates for co-op expansion and a simple quarantine pen. I could feel the farm shifting, not bigger yet, just clearer. He paused at the gate. "One more thing. People will tell you animals tie you down. Sometimes they anchor you." He wasn't wrong. The barn smelled like clean straw and good decisions. I ran a hand along a rail that needed paint and promised it a second chance. I laid graph paper on the table and drew a kitchen that earned its keep, 3-compartment sink. 12-burner range cooling racks, high as hope, and a prep table wide enough for grief to pass by without knocking anything over. I priced hoods, mixers, sheet pans, and labels, then added insurance that covers mistakes I haven't made yet. The numbers were stubborn, but honest. I cut corners where it wouldn't hurt, and refused to cut them where it would ventilation, food safety, fire suppression. I made a column for cash flow market days, wholesale to the cafe in town. Pre-orders for holidays that always arrive late. The plan looked like a road I've driven at dawn, familiar curves, one tricky turn, a payoff view. When I finished, I stuck the budget to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a rooster. The magnet held, so did I. I snapped a picture and sent it to Ephraim Huxley. He replied with a thumbs up that felt like a handshake. At 4, Tamsin Greer arrived with a sack of jars and the kind of grin that fixes weather. "You make crust, I'll make jam," she said, setting sugar on the counter like an altar. We worked shoulder to shoulder the way older women do. Quiet, quick, no-wasted motion. I folded butter into flour. She coaxed berries into a simmer that smelled like July. "People miss real food," she said, "the kind that tastes like someone cared." We talked price points and Saturday market foot traffic. She suggested samples on wooden spoons. I suggested a sign that says we don't cut corners, only pie. We baked 2 pies for research, then sliced them for the neighbors who wander to whatever kitchen smells like home. Plates came back empty, questions came back plenty. "Do you ship? Not yet. Do you take orders soon?" We looked at the cooling racks and saw inventory, not leftovers. "It could work," Tamsin said. "It already is," I answered and pulled another crust. That evening, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. Junia Calder, marketing, married to a neighbor's son, voice bright, brain quick. "I saw the pies on Facebook," she said. "Your story is the brand. Let me help you package it before somebody else does." She sketched ideas like she was decorating air label designs with a clean farmhouse line. Colors that taste like butter and berries, a photo style that makes people smell cinnamon through a screen. "Name?" she asked. I laughed at her first pitch and then liked it against my will, Grandma Eulalia's Kitchen. "I'm nobody's grandma," I teased. "America will disagree," she said, "and they'll buy too." We talked about platforms, not just posting, how to answer comments without losing days, how to turn recipes into reels without turning myself into a circus. "Pay me when it works," she added. "I want in on the building." We hung up with a draft logo and a feeling I hadn't had in years, momentum. We printed labels overnight and cleared a corner of the porch for a pop-up table. Junia Calder posted a single line, fresh pies, porch pickup, cash jar. By noon, the cash jar needed a bigger jar. A man in a delivery uniform said his grandmother used to make crust like mine, and stood there too long swallowing a memory. 2 nurses on break grabbed jams and promised to come back with friends. Ephraim Huxley swung by in a dusted truck left with a pie, and a list of people who'd be offended if I didn't save them one next time. I kept thinking it would slow. It didn't. By sunset, we had names on a waiting list and a message from the cafe, "Can you supply Fridays?" Junia Calder texted a mock-up of the logo on a jar. It looked like it belonged where it was. Soft launch. Tamsin snorted, stacking empty plates. Hard yes. We closed the gate that night with hands that shook in a good way. The next morning, I tacked a handwritten note to the fence part-time help wanted. Training provided. By evening, 3 women stood in my kitchen, one new to town, one recently widowed, one young and scared of everything except trying. I learned their names and their favorite pies and the hours they could spare between the lives that hadn't spared them. We started with knife safety and hand-washing songs, and the fact that the timer is the boss when the oven is full. I watched their shoulders lower when they realized they didn't have to know everything to be welcome. "You pay cash?" one asked, wary. "I pay properly," I said, and showed her the W-4 like a promise. The mixer thumped, and the room found its rhythm. At the end of the shift, each woman carried home a jar of jam and a schedule. "Why us?" the widow asked at the door. "Because someone opened a door for me," I said. I remember how it felt. Days found a cadence bake at 5 feet at 6-pack, by 8, sell by noon. Clean by habit. Laughter returned to the porch like it paid rent. Ephraim Huxley's crew hammered a new song on the roof, and I learned to count nails like blessings. The line at the gate didn't feel like pressure. It felt like proof. We kept a notebook for compliments and a notebook for fixes. Both grew. When the afternoon lull arrived, I sat with Tamsin Greer and let my legs ache in the good way. "You're burning both ends," she warned. "Ends grow back when the middle is strong," I said, surprising myself with how true it sounded. We added a chalkboard for sold-out items and watched people smile anyway. Somewhere in there, I forgot to check my phone for trouble every 5 minutes. Trouble had other places to be. The sun slid low, the new gutters did their job, and I tasted the rarest thing I know, being carried by what I carry. Toward evening, a truck I recognized, but didn't invite, pulled in slow. Cormac Hale climbed out alone. No sunglasses, no script. He looked thinner, older, like honesty takes calories you can't fake. "I came to apologize," he said, hands open, eyes steady. I poured coffee, set it on the porch rail, and let him speak without saving him. He didn't blame stress, or others, or me. He said greed, pride, and fear in a voice that finally fit his age. "I want to pay back what I tried to take," he added. "I don't know how yet." I told him the porch was open for conversation, the accounts were closed to requests, and dinner was available if he was hungry as a guest. He nodded like someone who has learned the difference between a gift and a right. We ate in the quiet that follows a good decision. Before he left, he asked what time the hens like their feed. "Early," I said. "Early suits me," he answered. A week later, he called before coming. Cormac Hale arrived in work boots and kept his eyes on the job, not the kitchen. He hauled feed, repaired the sag on the goat pen, and replaced 2 boards on the porch that had been complaining for years. He didn't narrate his redemption or ask for a second chance by noon. He just worked until sweat erased the need for speeches. When the drill slipped and nicked his knuckle, he grinned like a boy who finally respects a tool. "You don't owe me thanks," he said when I brought water. "I owe you work." He left the yard cleaner than he found it, and texted later to say he'd be back if I had more for him to do. I did. I always do. Each visit, he stayed inside the fence line I set, and for once we both liked the view from our sides. Earning feels heavier at first, then it feels right. 2 Saturdays after a woman with sun-tough hands and a foreman's stride walked up the drive. Sigrid Rowan, construction boss, introduced herself and asked for me by name. "I supervise your son," she said. "Thought you should hear this from someone who owes him nothing." She described a job site where Cormac Hale shows up early, leaves late, and treats the women on the crew like they belong, because they do. "He doesn't flirt, he doesn't bark, he doesn't vanish," she said. "He works." I let that settle the way cream settles slow, thick, honest. I didn't rush to forgive. I let proof keep speaking. Sigrid Rowan handed me a card. "If you ever need a wall raised or a roof framed, call me. He'll bring a crew that respects your house." After she left, I stood at the edge of the orchard and listened to the new gutters tick after the day's heat. Some changes claim themselves in speeches. The real ones show up with a reference. I set the rule plain: no speeches, no promises, prove it. Cormac Hale stood on the porch rail like he used to when he was 12, but this time his eyes didn't ask for a shortcut. I laid out the terms: show up on time, take the job that's needed, not the job that's pretty. Keep your voice low and your tools sharp. Cross one boundary, I said, and the gate swings shut. He didn't argue. He nodded and asked, "Where do I start?" I pointed to the list taped beside the door: goat pen posts, fence, paint porch steps. He read it like a map back to a country he left. The hens complained from the oak, and a breeze carried the smell of cut pine from Ephraim Huxley's crew. I waited for the old ache to flare. It didn't. I felt something steadier take its place. Authority without apology. "Clock starts now," I said. He picked up a hammer. The porch boards kept their thoughts to themselves. Days blurred into a rhythm that didn't need narration. Cormac Hale fixed the sway in the goat pen, then rehung the gate, so it didn't shriek like a bad memory. He sanded the splinters out of the porch rail where children's hands might catch, and primed fence slats until the yard looked like a promise halfway kept. He texted before coming parked where the gravel wouldn't rut, and left tools coiled the way a respectful man leaves a story tidy with an ending you can trust. Tamsin Greer watched from the fence line sometimes, not judging, just measuring. "Consistency is a love language," she said, handing me a jar to label. By the second week, my shoulders stopped bracing for the ask that never came. By the third, the list shrank, and my doubt did too. I caught myself planning next tasks out loud, then stopped, then didn't. He wiped sweat with the back of his wrist and asked for more nails. I handed him a box and kept my "yes, small but real." Word travels faster than trucks in a small town. Sigrid Rowan mentioned a dust-up on her crew, a man twice the size of the new girl making a joke that wasn't a joke. She said Cormac Hale stepped between them without a speech, just a steady "not here," and stood there until the air cooled. "No heroics," Sigrid Rowan added, just a line that stayed put. Later, Cormac Hale showed up with scraped knuckles and no story. I asked anyway. "She's new," he said. "Everyone deserves to start without dodging elbows." The words were simple. The change wasn't. Years ago, he would have laughed along and called it nothing. Tonight, he iced his hand and asked if we had any leftover pie, like a boy asking for mercy he hadn't earned. I sliced it and set it down. Mercy isn't a shortcut. It's a direction. The porch light hummed, the night insects tuned up, and I realized I wasn't waiting for him to relapse. I was watching him choose. I won't pretend it happened in a flood. It came like a slow rain that finally soaks the ground. Cormac Hale tightened the last hinge on the chicken coop, and when it didn't sag under the test, that solid, quiet success, I felt pride walk up my spine and knock twice. I let it in, but kept the chain on. Tamsin Greer saw it too. "You don't have to feed him with forgiveness," she said. "Just feed the work." I nodded and labeled jars while the mixer beat a steady heartbeat into dough. Junia Calder swung by with a new label proof and caught the tail of our conversation. "Brand note," she said, grinning, "pride is good if you spell it with boundaries." We laughed, but the truth landed clean. I poured coffee, handed one mug to Cormac Hale, and set mine on the rail where I could pick it up or leave it. He didn't ask for a seat. He asked for the next task, The gate stayed where I set it. A month in Cormac Hale came early, boots dusted, posture steady. I have an idea, he said. Not a plan, not a plea, an idea. Put me on payroll like any other hand, he continued. Pay rate posted on the wall. No favors. If revenue grows because I build more capacity deliveries, storage shelves. We sign a simple profit share for the parts I grow. He looked me in the eye. You keep ownership. You keep final say. It was clean. It was adult. It respected the difference between inheritance and contribution. I told him I don't do handshakes anymore. I do paper. He nodded. Bring in Bramwell quill, he said. Make it tight. The old ache flickered, then quieted. This wasn't a son angling for my purse. It was a worker offering to carry weight where the beam bends. I said I'd think. He said he'd keep working either way. The hens announced an egg like a small brass band. I wrote contract on a yellow pad. I took the idea to Tamsin Greer first, because she remembers me before and after. She listened, asked for numbers, then for sleep. If you do this, she said in the morning, you'll need rules you can live with when you're tired. We sat with Bramwell Quill at his office, where pens don't wander. He drafted a contract that knew the difference between help and leverage wage. Posted scope of work, defined profit share, tied to measurable improvements. 6-month reviews with the right to walk away if respect goes missing. Cormac Hale read every line and didn't blink at the hard parts. I want it that way, he said. We added one clause that was mine alone. No decisions made in kitchens after 9 p.m. Bramwell Quill smiled. Good policy for the nation, he said. We signed. No fanfare, just ink that finally told the truth. Outside the courthouse, flags snapped once in a clean wind. Inside, I put the contract in a folder that closes. Paper didn't fix the past, but it gave the future a spine. The first paycheck cleared. The first review went by without fireworks. Cormac Hale brought receipts instead of excuses, ideas instead of demands. One evening after he hauled flour and built shelves and left the place better than he found it, he turned at the gate. Thank you, he said, for letting me try. The word I hadn't used in years rose like a bird that finally trusts the air. Son, I said, tasting it. Testing it. Letting it land. He didn't rush to catch it. He let it perch where it wanted. He looked older and lighter all at once the way a man looks when he's carrying his own end of the board. Tamsin Greer watched from the porch, hands in her apron. Eyes kind but strict. Don't spend it all in one place, she teased later. I won't. Some words are cash, some are savings. This one is both. Time did what it does when you stop begging it to slow down. It filled itself. 3 years later, the porch is a picture, only because the kitchen works like a factory. We opened a second location in town, hired 15 women at fair wages, and handed the day-to-day to Junia Calder, who runs schedules like traffic lights, clear kind, unarguable. The original porch still hosts pickups and stories. We turned the backlot into a training kitchen for women who need a clean start. Tamsin Greer keeps the books with a pencil and a smile that says, "We're not going broke today." The farm hums new gutters, strong rails a roof that laughs at sideways rain. I still wake at 5. I still trim roses that bite back. Pride doesn't feel like a parade anymore. It feels like opening the door to a line of women who are on time because hope doesn't like to be kept waiting. The mission fits feed people, pay women tell the truth. On a Wednesday that smelled like cinnamon rolls and rain, the phone rang. A bank officer, new voice, same precision as Kezia Bloom, asked to confirm an anonymous donation to our women's fund. Amount, I said, pen ready. 50,000, she answered. The number hit like deja vu, with the sharp edges sanded off. I didn't ask who, but the orchard inside me nodded. That evening, Cormac Hale arrived, late mud on his boots, some worry in his eyes that turned out to be hope. I met him halfway down the walk. Good choice, I said. He flushed and said nothing. The best kind of confession. We didn't make a speech for the stars. We loaded a van for morning deliveries and labeled jars while the cooling racks clicked. The past didn't vanish. It recalculated. When he left, he touched the porch post and paused like a man saying grace with his hand. Circles close best when they become spirals upward. Outward useful. That night the light went lavender and the fields breathed out the day. Tamsin Greer set 2 mugs on the rail and left us to the crickets. Cormac Hale leaned against the post. He replaced the one that no longer wobbles when the north wind hits. "I wish I could undo it," he said, not begging. "Just true. You did something better," I answered. "You turned it into fuel." He nodded, jaw tight, eyes steady. I stepped forward and did the thing I wouldn't let grief or pride delay. I hugged my son like a woman who survived her own doubt. "Let's make this count." I said into his shoulder. The porch held, the roof held, we held. Out past the fence, the road caught a car and carried it away. Not all departures are losses. Some are air returning to rooms that forgot how to breathe. He left with tomorrow's list in his pocket. I stayed with a sentence I finally meant, make wrong things right. This is where my path leads. Respect and autonomy never disappear. They don't fade with birthdays or give way to convenience. Love isn't control, and the phrase "for your benefit" means nothing without my consent. I started as the quiet woman who kept the peace, became the woman who carefully read every line and drew the line, and ended up as the woman who fed an entire town and raised funds to help others escape hardship. Tonight I cut another white rose, the same bush, the same thorns. But this time I hold it with gratitude, not sadness. My legacy isn't a monument, it's a map, a step-by-step guide for anyone asked to relinquish control. Read carefully before signing, lock down what belongs to you. Gather witnesses and build something that will weather the storm. If my story has helped you stay strong, please share yours below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel